What's the worst non-drug addiction you've ever seen? I have a friend whose paycheck is entirely lost to online blackjack hours after he gets it each week. It's a terrible existence. My wife wasn't to the point of addiction, but she was starting to like blackjack a little too much. When I sat her down and we talked about it, we decided she should try dealing blackjack instead. She found a job doing it within a week. It's been a year, and I think she's played maybe once since, and only because I wanted to go out and suggested it. My wife wasn't to the point of addiction, but she was started to like blackjack a little too much. When I sat her down and we talked about it, we decided she should try dealing blackjack instead. She found a job doing it within a week. It's been a year, and I think she's played maybe once since, and only because I wanted to go out and suggested it. That's actually really smart. I'm glad it worked out well for y'all. For an additional anecdote, my mom really loved poker. She quit her job, drained her 401k, and now travel deals poker and then immediately gambles her check after she gets it playing poker. She is probably going to die alone and broke at this rate. Hey, my mom drained my dead dad's 401k on scratch-offs and slot machines at the casino. I feel ya. And I'm not trying to be super negative, just miserably rooted in reality. She's gotten better at hiding it. A lot of addicts just become deceitful with their obsession/addiction of choice. Source M1. I got really good at hiding my shit. Dealing it, I'm sure she sees the same sad faces of people deluding themselves while losing their rears week after week. An ex of mine dealt at a local casino, and those places can be full of hard luck addict stories. She's likely learned her lesson much less expensively. She only deals a couple nights a week at a bar in town, so she doesn't get too hard of a reality check. Not as much as she would in a casino, anyways. But she has regulars she tells me about who go back and forth from the ATM all night when they're losing and aren't afraid to say, well, my account's empty, I guess it's time to go home. So luckily that, combined with getting enough of a taste of playing from being on the opposite side of the table, she's satisfied. Gambling is the devil. I got into online blackjack when I was 19 or 20. I only had saved 400 euros and eventually lost everything. I'm glad I was broke because I would have lost 2K if I had them. I stole some gold earrings from my mom to sell it so I could top up and potentially recover. Can't remember, but I got maybe 100-ish euro. Obviously lost that too. I stole some gold pendant from my grandma. When I tried to sell, the guy said that wasn't really gold. The whole thing, but especially stealing, made me feel so ashamed of myself that I stopped immediately, and 10 years later, I still feel ashamed of myself for it. I kept the pendant I stole from my grandma in my wallet for years as a reminder to not be stupid again. My mom has mentioned a few times in the last few years that she's wanted to give me some gold earrings from when she was young that she knows I'd love, but that she can't find them anywhere. And she's right, I'd love them. I'm really sorry, Mom. Your mom would forgive you if you told her, because you stopped. My ex-husband pawned his grandmother's engagement ring that she brought all the way from Italy for $100. He bought two $50 scratcher tickets. Loudly crying face, I'm so glad you had your wake-up call early. My ex-husband lost his house, me, and over $350,000 since December 2023. If only she knew how much you've grown and regret it. She'd be proud of you, bro. Cheapest/best lesson you'll ever learn. Especially blackjack. You'll never hit it big with blackjack. Blackjack is about the best odds you're going to get to winning. Not online. Physically, you can count cards and predict stuff with statistics. There is no guarantee that the online casino is not tweaking the odds on their favor. I make online casino games. We have a blackjack. It is in the casino's favor and stated to the player. Outside of every game being in favor of the casino, real online casinos can't rig games. They're pretty regulated and could never go live like that. A bad gambling addiction will have you at nothing 10x faster than a substance addiction, which is crazy considering how fast drugs can do it. As a recovering addict, I've always been fascinated by the gambler and how they get a similar rush as my high from a stimulant or opiate, but via putting money on the line. I've gambled and lost, and have never found a high from it. Illustrates how much variation the human mind provides. It's gambling without a doubt. I read a book, and gamblers actually have a higher suicide rate than any other addict. Since sports gambling became legal, there's a huge surge in athletes getting death threats and shit because some degenerate lost their car betting on them. We were at UW to see my sister, and my dad was laughing at UCLA security detail. He was mind blown when I told him that players get death threats or are potential victims of sabotage. Legalizing gambling has ramped everything up. Knew sometimes players will throw games, but never thought someone may take a bat to the star player right before the game. Wow, it's only a matter of time before some college kid gets Kerrigan ETA. Nancy Kerrigan, LOL, y'all young bucks can Google her. Used to work surveillance at a casino. Would regularly field phone calls from family members looking for a missing loved one who'd been there gambling for days without telling anyone, or begging us to ban their family member because they were about to lose their house. One lady would stay weekends, come down in her pajamas, lose tens of thousands of dollars before breakfast, then threaten to kill herself. She'd do this every few months, but she was always given help and always came back. I loved the job itself. The company took care of employees, but I was working for an industry which was a net negative for society. I worked at a casino gas station, and most of our regulars would engage in a lot of gambling there too, via the lotto and scratchers. People would show up for their once-a-week casino day and buy $100 on a lottery and spend an hour scratching in front of the scratcher machine. It was always pretty depressing, especially when they came in literally looking like they're not living very well. Ungroomed, unshaven, visibly dirty clothes. All I've learned is that gambling in general is a money pit. You throw your money in there, knowingly or unknowingly, not because you think you'll win, but because the idea of winning gives you dopamine. I mean, hell, one of my coworkers was a single dad and would spend $100 of every paycheck on lotto tickets. Like, dude, you have a kid. You should be buying him food. You don't have to be in Vegas for that. I see seniors at the grocery store here throw a crisp $50 from their freshly cashed SSI check in the machine for a single scratcher. A fucking $50 lotto ticket. I know the payout odds are better than on $1 and $2 tickets, but geez, they don't even scratch the games. They skip right down to the MICR code and scratch that, and then scan on the scanner that all of the Texas Lotto machines now have. They can lose, win, or double their grant in 15 seconds or less, depending on that day's arthritis. Pep just keeps a trash can next to the machines. It gets emptied multiple times per day on SSI activation days. My favorite was when they'd scan it, and it would say, "Sorry, not a winner." So they'd take it to us to scan because they thought the machine was broken. Almost a year working there, and I remember exactly once when a scratcher was valid, but the barcode was incorrect. Every other time, they just didn't understand the rules, or were counting on me being too stupid to see through their obvious bullshit. My boyfriend committed suicide due to his gambling addiction. It's devastating, it destroys lives, and doesn't discriminate. My husband committed suicide also about 20 years ago. The pain never goes away, and I miss him so much. I'm sending you an internet hug. Stranger, because I share your pain. You sound young, and it's such a heavy cross to bear. I'm sorry for your loss. I really am. I'm sorry for yours. How kind of you to reach out to someone and try to help, especially when you're dealing with such a horrible loss yourself. You make me proud to be a human. Had a neighbor that was in her 60s. She went to the casino fairly often during the week, but limited herself to only going to Vegas once a month. She only had 2 rules for her trips to Vegas. Only bring cash. Leave a $50 bill underneath a rock at the outskirts of Vegas for gas money to get her home. My grandma's big joy as she aged was going to the casino or Vegas. The thing is, while she usually lost, she had a comfortable life. Her bills were all paid on time. She had food, a car, ECT. But she would go to the casino once or twice a week and Vegas several times a year. She'd joke about blowing my inheritance. I told her as long as she could afford her life to have at it. It was her money to spend. I'd go with her every so often, but that was more to spend time with her. While I think her enjoyment could have evolved into an addiction, I don't really believe it hit that mark. Did I receive an inheritance? Absolutely not. If she gambled the inheritance, she was addicted. Nah, if she saved her money, lived an okay life, and made it to the end without debt, she managed her money well and lasted. It's no different if it was model trains or whatever. Nobody is owed an inheritance. Feel free to spend what you earned and saved. That's how I looked at it. She did a lot for me throughout my life as it stood. I didn't expect or think I was owed anything. Would it have been nice? Hell yeah. However, I had also been the subject of a lot of mean, nasty shit from my aunts as it was. Like I was spoiled or coerced my grandmother. It's one of the other reasons I was cool with her spending it on herself. My father-in-law goes to the casino occasionally. He and my Emile budget fund money for themselves. He takes a set amount of it and treats it like he's spending the money, not gambling it. If he runs out, he runs out. If he wins a bunch, then he uses it to go buy some tool or something that he wanted but didn't have budgeted yet. That idea of going in with the attitude that you're spending the money, I think, is a good one. Well, it's essentially true. You're buying entertainment, and as bonus, you can make some of what you pay back. Going with any other expectation is a recipe for disappointment. I have a close friend of mine who was a video game addict during college. He would spend all his time up in his room just gaming from the time he woke up until he passed out in his gaming chair at like 3 a.m. He was failing college classes, skipping out on parties, and hanging out with friends, and it completely took over his life. That is, until my friends and I sat him down and literally had an intervention with him about how we never see him anymore. And he broke down and admitted he was completely addicted. We came up with a system where he would turn his controllers over to us, and we would let him have them only when he proved he turned his assignments in. Pretty soon, he was gaming less and less and ended up going to med school. He's now a doctor with a happy family. And he still will bring up how thankful he is that he had friends that had his back instead of just letting him do his hobby. Video game addiction is real, guys. Y'all are some badass fucking friends. Not only did they help him, by proxy, they helped all his future patients. I can't believe I had to scroll down this far. Major publishers share data with casinos on how to make their games more addictive. Reddit ain't ready for this convo, LOL. Yeah. Every post about anything negative about video games gets downvoted into oblivion at Reddit. You need a balance in the time you put into video games like everything else. I was surprised as well, especially with games like World of Warcraft. Video game addiction is extremely real, especially when you become top level at a game you've been playing. It's even worse when that game had a casino-style predatory system in it like FIFA. I almost lost my family, and I spent like 10 to 15K. I once spent 9 straight months doing nothing but playing an MMO strategy game. I was number 1 on my server and well-known across our whole server block, but it cost me 18 plus HRS every day, all the money I would have made if I'd been working instead, and my entire social life. The duration of a human gestation period, and I pissed it away on a video game that wasn't even fun. Playing at that level isn't enjoyable. It's just effort and headaches. And that only gets worse if you're also a clan leader / diplomat or trying to run a Discord for your server. I don't play online games anymore. Single-player games are much easier to put down. Heard about a woman on the local news the other day whose clothes shopping addiction had become so bad she was spending over £700, $920, a week on clothes. She was getting into debt and had to get professional help. The irony was that on the news report, she dressed really badly and had shop racks full of similar, drab clothes. I worked in a high-end boutique. We had about 20 high-spending regulars. I assumed they were all just filthy rich, but I slowly started learning that most of them just had shopping addictions. All wonderful women who had a very toxic habit that was destroying their marriages. Most of them spend $500 to $1,000 per week just at our store. My ex had a shopping addiction, and it really pissed me off. What was she constantly buying? Fucking nail polish. Expensive ones, among other things. Drove past her parents' house 8 years later, and she's still living there. Saw an Amazon driver dropping like 12 packages in front of her. So she obviously didn't change her ways. I had this same addiction before I got married. We put it on a scale, and when I finally gave them up, it was 72 pounds. Opened my eyes to what a huge problem it was. I now own about 10 bottles, but I only buy any when I completely use one up. It was a nightmare. Making $900 last a full week of shopping sounds like she is buying really cheap stuff and mostly hunting for sales. You could spend that much in 15 minutes at a nice clothing store. She realized she had a problem, though, when she'd wake up and immediately start buying clothes online. The clothes she bought did look very average, though. But it was all fast fashion garbage. So she could get loads of dopamine hits on buying like 12 things at a time. In a very weird and unexplainable way, the fact that she had terrible taste in fashion almost compounds the issue for me. I guess I think that if someone gets help for an addiction like that, well, they're at least left with a nice, usable wardrobe. To spend so much driving yourself into mountains of debt, only to look like shit as well. And what ironic is that substance abuse is similar, except you make your body look like hell, like the faces of meth photos. Why this bothers me like it does? I don't know. Gambling. Due to my friend's circle, used to be a drug dealer. Somehow in that entire time, he never got addicted. He went straight, got certified as a med tech, and was making a good life for himself. Then around COVID quarantine, he lost his job, got super isolated, and got into online gambling. Absolutely wrecked himself. He hit up every single person on his friend's list asking for $60 to get his car fixed. Nobody talks to him anymore. It's pretty sad. Knew several smarter drug dealers that used their profits as seed money and left the hustle behind. Huge risk in it, but morally not much different than most millionaires doing sketchy stuff and hiding behind lawyers. If you grow up poor without a lot of support or opportunity, women become sex workers and men become drug dealers. That's just how it is, although sometimes the reverse can be true. I grew up poor and disabled, became a stripper, saved up some money, and got into programming. It sucks because sometimes you have to make a choice between doing the moral thing and survival. People who grow up rich will never understand. When you're facing homelessness, you end up saying, you know what? Why the hell should I care if you want to ruin your own body/marriage? I don't care what any of the Puritans say. There is nothing inherently wrong with sex work. It's a dangerous world surrounding it, which can get you into trouble a lot of ways, but sex work itself is totally fine. Sounds like you got through it okay, and congratulations on that. Nothing to be ashamed of. A girl I dated got $2,000 from her grandparents for high school graduation. She used it to buy $2,000 worth of coke. She gave the coke to a guy who turned it into crack and sold it. Guy kept 20%, she got the rest, and bought herself a super nice Honda Accord. Biggest surprise is the guy holding up his end of the bargain turned over 80%. I worked casino surveillance for 18 plus years. I've seen people walk out with over $100,000 in winnings only to be arrested for murdering their spouse to cash in the life insurance a year later. Houses, businesses, families, entire lives gone. I worked in a casino, and the number of people who lost their businesses and spouses over gambling issues was really depressing. They were your customers, and you were happy to welcome them and treat them well. But man, sometimes you wanted to tell them to go home and not come back. Here's an idea. Why don't you give me half the money you were going to bet? Then we'll go out back, I'll kick you in the nuts, and we'll call it a day. I know a 60s age fella who's lost high-paying jobs, a house, a marriage, and their children gave up on them. Still gambles every day, all day. My wife has had a gambling problem for years. She spends all our money as soon as it's in the account. It's so brutal. She can't be reasoned with and gets violently angry if I don't send her all the funds I have. What's even worse is she won $70,000 a month ago, and it justified in her mind that what she's doing is the right thing. She gave back that money in 2 weeks. I live in Ontario, Canada, and online gambling has ruined my finances and family. I will always hate gambling for the rest of my life. Edit. Yes, I'm aware that I let things get out of hand, and that obviously gambling isn't the problem so much as her behavior. I have severe lung fibrosis and have a couple of years left as I'm on oxygen most of the time. I have 2 kids who are young adults now who have stood up and refused to fund her habit. I'm hoping I get my youngest son, 14, ready before I go to hospice or palliative care. I was just commenting on how addictive gambling could be, as I have never been aware of it. This might be a situation you consider removing yourself from. My spouse has not had access to any of my or our money for 30 years. He gets an allowance and immediately puts it into a poker machine. Doesn't care about winning, just wants playing time. It's sad. I can't even ask him to stop and pick up milk because he goes 6 days a week without a dime in his pocket. I hate it. He's addicted. Once he opened a bunch of credit cards, had bills sent to work, took all cash advances, couldn't keep up. I found out when they started calling the house. The collectors were all too happy to tell me about the debts. Fortunately, I was not responsible for paying. I just gave them his cell number, told them the landline was in my name, and I don't give them permission to call. I never said a word to him. He then came clean and asked to take out a home equity loan to pay it off. No freaking way. He went to credit counseling, and it took 4 years and all of his allowance to pay it. Started gambling again. It's a terrible addiction, 100%. I work at a gas station in MA, the state known to have the highest sales for scratchers, or maybe lottery in general. I will have people come and spending hundreds of dollars a day on shiny pieces of paper that is most likely are worth nothing. I have no judgment towards these people, but it's genuinely heartbreaking and is the leading factor of why I want to quit this job. I used to have your job, and I have the varicose vein to prove it. To me, the most heartbreaking part was the old folks who would spend like $1 and stay and talk for 45 minutes because they had no one else to talk to. Gambling can be so much worse than alcoholism/drug use because your body doesn't tell you to stop. When I'm drunk, I may have spent a good chunk of money buying alcohol, but I physically can't drink anymore, which makes me stop spending money. Gambling, there's no physical trigger. My friend who did time in the Korean prison system knew a guy who got locked up for swindling people for money to gamble it all away. He told my friend that he would dream of gambling again as a way to get him through. Play games in his mind to pass the time. I did an inpatient stint last year for drugs and alcohol. My counselor let out a sigh of relief when I told her no regarding a gambling addiction. She said, "Oh, you're one of the easy ones." If a counselor is saying that, then yikes. It must be a different part of the brain or something. I have a somewhat addictive personality, and I live in a place where you can play at the freaking grocery store, but I never got into it. I play a few times here and there, but gambling in my mind is basically just a vanishing act for your hard-earned money. I genuinely do not understand my friends who will lose 10 grand overnight and be back the next day playing. I bartend, and a handful of people I work with are so deep into sports betting. One guy will hit it big, pay people to cover his shifts 1 week, then be in our group chat the following begging for shifts because he lost his ass the fucking guy bets on anything. Literally. Once he was gambling on D2 women's volleyball. I didn't even know you could do that. Once saw a guy beating the shot out of himself with a metal pipe outside of a casino. As I hurriedly walked away, I heard him call his wife and tell her he was mugged. I can only imagine he was finding a way to explain how he lost a bunch of money without admitting he was gambling. There's a reason gambling addiction is the only behavioral addiction recognized by the DSM-5. This is it. Liar's Poker and Moneyball author Michael Lewis's recent season of his podcast Against the Rules focused on the online sports gambling industry. It's way worse than any of us even guessed. When they got licensed, they promised to identify problem gamblers and help them. What they do is help them to lose everything. Successful gamblers are barred. My auntie had a shopping addiction, and it was bad. When she died, it took months to sort out her things. She had so much, and she had been in severe debt for it. A friend's parent has this. They had 3 air fryers delivered the other week. My stepmom is a shopping addict. She literally doesn't even remember half of the stuff she ordered or what it's for. She has 6 brand new box fans still in the box in the garage, shelves full of brand new shoes, clothing. She gave me camp chairs last weekend with the tags still on them that were $140 each. She bought 3 different Blackstone grills and never even used one. She just gave them all away. The reckless debt is insane. It's such a crazy addiction. I have an ex-friend who had a horrible shopping addiction. She started embezzling from her company to pay for it. She had bags and boxes sitting around unopened. Her husband left her. She got caught and managed to get probation and restitution, but did it again. I was friends with her boss. She did it to the second time. And she called me to let me know my friend was in jail and likely go to prison. And she did. I had known her since we were both 4 years old. It's incredibly sad. She is a very charismatic and intelligent person who could have done so much with her life. My grandma had the same issue. She owned several rental properties with her husband in the 80s and 90s. They were very well off, like potentially set for life. And when he passed, she just couldn't stop spending money. Ended up losing all of the property and went into severe debt. Growing up, I remember my mom just being furious because she would buy all of us a ridiculous amount of nonsensical, overpriced gifts for every holiday possible and had dozens of unopened boxes from Cat. A log orders scattered around the house for years, but would constantly complain about money issues and was resentful toward her wealthy sister, who was frugal as humanly possible. She ended up losing her house and living the rest of her life in the back bedroom of my aunt's place. It was really sad to watch. That is one of the most common addictions, especially among women, but they don't think of it as an addiction. I always find food addiction to be the worst. As someone who's dealing and dealt with addiction, I can easily avoid alcohol or drugs, but you need food to survive. Anyone who overcomes food addiction is a badass. I would never have been able to moderate my drinking. It's pretty amazing anyone can beat their addiction while having to actively learn to control it. I have dealt with food addiction and food noise, and still do to some extent. It's basically like an alcoholic trying to quit alcohol or someone addicted to drugs trying to get clean, but you still have to consume the drugs and alcohol in order to survive. You can't just go cold turkey. I lost 115 pounds during COVID, and thankfully, for the most part, I have been able to keep the food addiction and food noise at bay. I took semaglutide for my food addiction, and it was an absolute godsend. Also helped a lot with a chronic GI condition that I have, which unfortunately gets triggered by almost anything I eat. But since I'm not overweight anymore, I'm no longer approved to keep taking it. And I can't afford the brand name, so now my cravings are back in full force, and it's been mental torture. Sad face. That's ridiculous. There's such things as continuity of care PAs. GLP-1s, for most people, should be considered a lifelong medication. I would get my doctor to file a COC PA and then appeal it if denied. There's zero damn reason it should be divisive at all. No one gives people with diabetes shit for taking insulin. No gives people with thyroid conditions shit for taking Synthroid. And no one should give chronically obese people shit for taking GLP-1s because it's all literally the same thing. Hormonal balance. GLP-1s regulate hormones that are out of whack for obese people like hunger and satiety cues. The stigma needs to end. People need to let their biases and preconceptions die and research what the drugs actually do before spouting of their wrong opinions. I've always thought about this when people say it's easy to lose weight, just eat less. Imagine if a recovering alcoholic had to drink a shot of vodka each morning and evening. How hard it would be to stop there. I had been sober for a few years with no desire to drink again. I got in a fight with the wife one night and decided to drink out of spite. And I was shocked at how quickly I went from 2 drinks to get a buzz to just mindlessly drinking whatever I could find. I was aware enough to not drink again after that. But if I had to do a shot a day, I'd maybe make it 2 weeks before my first blackout. Think on some level you are correct. That any eating disorder is perhaps the hardest for the reason you state. Mobile phone addiction. I see a lot of people saying gambling, but I think a lot of people aren't ready for what's coming. I'm a former teacher. I had a student try to physically fight me because I took her phone, which is school policy. I had to have her removed from my classroom. This is the most extreme, but it's consistent. They will scream. They will cry. They will give you burners, even during state testing. You have to call parents, and the parents will agree that you can take their phone. But the kids will throw fits in front of you. And it's not really about the phone. It's about the fact that they're so focused on the phone that they can't do the things that are expected of them in school. They can't sit still. They can barely read. They hate writing. They aren't curious about things. It's going to be a disaster for innovation and our economy. I was honestly devastated the first time we went with my sister-in-law and her kids, 7, 5, 3, to the zoo. They would look at an animal for 5 to 10 seconds, then be like, okay, phone. No curiosity, no interest, just I need dopamine. But IRL experiences can rarely match the dopamine of the phone. My husband and I are there like, wow, a rhino. How fast do you think they can run? Which is heavier, a rhino or a hippo? And then we both guess and use our phones to find out who is closer if the sign doesn't say. Kids are losing the ability to create meaning or create their own enrichment if it's not handed to them. And it makes me sad. I totally agree. Children who started life with smartphones and tablets have a brand new neurology that no group of humans have ever had. We have no clue of the long-term ramifications of that. And it's global, which is mind-boggling. I have two cousins that are both teachers of young children. They've both told me they can tell which kids have been raised by a tablet and which ones have had actual toys to play with. It really does change them at a fundamental level, and I don't think we know yet if it's permanent or exactly how bad the effect will be once they're older. My mother is a childminder and usually avoids this because she starts with them young enough to at least have them raised without tablets when they're with her. But one kid she took on was older, and she believed he'd had nothing but a tablet to entertain himself at home. He just didn't know how to play at all, and his coordination was terrible. At 4, he didn't even have the grip strength to hold a pen properly. Pulling out your own hair strand by strand. Trichotillomania. Someone I knew who had this ended up taking their own life. It was so tragic. My niece has this, and she's clinically depressed as well. Unfortunately, my mom and her grandmother passed away due to suicide, so it's been really rough. I just try to be there for her. Thankfully, I believe her autism makes her not care that much about what she personally looks like. I have dermatillomania, I pick my skin, and it is such a F-up problem to have. Same. The best way I've been able to combat it is wearing long clothing and using skincare products to keep the bumps down. If I notice bumps and can't get rid of them ASAP, they stay on my mind all day. I have that too. It's a disorder called trichotillomania, if you didn't know. Sending love if you're saying this from experience. Oh shit, I do this with my beard hair, so I have to keep myself shaved. If it ever gets too long, I'll be plucking until my fingers hurt. I have fingernail marks in my pointer fingers from my thumbnail, digging into it constantly. They calloused into an indent. I have thin/fine hair, so when I feel a thick coarse hair in the back of my head, it gets yanked, which leads to me sifting through all my hair for these strands and ripping out chunks. My hairline on the back is an absolute mess. Partially grown out areas with missing patches, and then untouched parts. An older man in my gated community retired and decided to walk around the community. It was safe with plenty of shade. Walking became an obsession, probably aided by advancing dementia. He walked himself to death while the community watched. He lost so much weight, he became skeletal. He finally was put into a memory care facility. Seems crazy to become addicted to something healthy that ends up killing you. I have worked in memory care, and that is a thing, like their brain will not let them rest, and they have to be on the move. They would get violent if you tried too hard to redirect them or try to get them to relax for a while. I had a resident who had dementia and generally couldn't remember what was going on in the moment, or at least that's how I saw it. One day, I asked her how come she walked so much. She said when she was young, an overweight her doctor told her she needs to walk more, and she never stopped moving unless she was sleeping/eating until she passed. My dad never developed dementia, but he retired earlier than many, at 62, and even though he had retired, he was still doing stuff all day and night constantly. Always repairing something, building something, gardening, cooking, learning bird watching, etc. He just never could be still. I think he was running from his own thoughts. I personally think a major reason he let himself pass this past April, because he could barely move anymore and was stuck in his head on for once. He had a twisted intestine and was down in bed for a week before the hospital. He just refused to go to the doctor/ER and ended up there anyway via ambulance. Had a surgery I know he didn't want, then kept trying to take off the tubes/wires/oxygen mask. He had stated repeatedly he was not going to live like that, and his stubborn ass didn't. He was 87. The coolest part about humans is they can become addicted to anything. Sports betting. I watched a VP from another department at my old job lose his house, cars, wife and kids, because he couldn't stop betting despite interventions. We are talking millions of dollars of debt. UHG and sports betting just quietly popped up overnight, and now it's everywhere. I really worry about this generation of young men because they are being targeted by sports betting. The worst ID, you can't even watch sport anymore. It's everywhere in all sports. X was a gambler. He'd drive hours just to blow through thousands at the drop of a hat, like draining every dollar he had to his name. was a wild thing to see in person. And the house always wins in the end, especially with addicts, as they will blow their wins on more gambling.